What if old Hollywood's coolest prop was slowly killing its biggest stars? Cigarettes made men look rich, dangerous, romantic, and untouchable. But behind the smoky stare and perfect suit came cancer, heart disease, and bodies breaking down. These are 10 screen icons who made smoking look cool, until smoke helped destroy the men behind the legend. The man who seemed bulletproof was fatally wounded by smoke. Dean Martin. Dean Martin, the king of cool, made audiences swoon with his voice, humor, and effortless charisma. Frank Sinatra had the danger. Jerry Lewis had the chaos. But Dean had that lazy smile that said, "Relax, folks. I have this under control." And for a long time, everybody believed him. On stage, the cigarette looked like part of the act. It matched the tuxedo, the soft voice, the punchlines, and the whole Rat Pack fantasy. He could sing a love song, roast a friend, and make the audience laugh before the ash even hit the tray. The problem was, the smoke was not a prop once the curtain closed. It followed him through decades of fame, parties, late nights, and Hollywood applause. By the 1980s, the charm began to crack. The man who once made life look like one long cocktail hour was slowing down. In 1993, Dean Martin was diagnosed with lung cancer. 2 years later, in 1995, he was gone at 78. That is the cruel twist of his story. Dean Martin made smoking look smooth, harmless, almost funny. But cancer was not laughing. Behind the velvet voice and effortless jokes was a body paying the bill for a lifestyle Hollywood had sold as glamorous. Dino could make a room feel lighter with one line, but even the king of cool could not charm his way past smoke. His final lesson is simple and brutal. Sometimes the coolest habit in the room is the one quietly taking everything from you.
So this is old John, huh? You know, not only are you important in show business, but I found out you're important in...
Burt Lancaster looked like the kind of man who could wrestle a bear, win the argument, then ask the bear if it wanted an autograph. With that athletic build, flashing grin, and movie star confidence, he became one of Hollywood's great symbols of strength. In From Here to Eternity, he had the romance. In Elmer Gantry, he had the fire. In action roles, he had the body. In dramas, he had the soul. Lancaster did not just act tough. He looked custom-built by Hollywood to make other men sit up straighter. And that is what makes his story hit so hard. Behind all that power was a habit slowly working against him: cigarettes. For years, smoking followed him through the same world that praised his vitality. Hollywood loved the image. A strong man, a sharp suit, a cigarette in hand. It looked cool on camera, but lungs do not care about lighting, angles, or box office numbers. By the 1990s, Lancaster's health was no longer matching the legend. Lung cancer and heart disease began breaking down the man who once seemed almost impossible to break. This was an actor who performed his own stunts, carried scenes with pure physical force, and made masculinity look effortless. But smoke did not care how strong he looked. In 1994, Burt Lancaster died at 80. His death was more than the loss of a great actor. It was a brutal reminder that Hollywood's version of strength was often wrapped in danger. The man looked indestructible, but cigarettes found the weak spot. And in the end, the toughest opponent Lancaster ever faced was not a villain, a fistfight, or a bad review. It was the smoke he had carried with him for decades.
You're a family man, Harvey, and someday, God willing, you may want to be president. And here you are, out in the open.
Humphrey Bogart did not just play cool. He practically put cool in a trench coat, tipped a fedora on its head, and handed it a cigarette. From Casablanca to the Maltese Falcon, Bogart's face seemed made for black and white smoke. One squint, one growl, one cloud curling across the screen, and America bought the whole package. Tough guy. Broken romantic. Man of mystery. Also, apparently, a walking chimney with better dialogue. But off camera, the cigarette was not just movie magic. Bogart smoked heavily, constantly, and without the warning labels modern audiences know today. Between takes, at parties, in photographs, the smoke followed him like a co-star that never missed a scene. Hollywood made it look stylish. His body knew better. By 1956, the legend began to crack. Bogart's health failed, and doctors discovered esophageal cancer linked to years of smoking. The man who looked like he could stare down any villain was suddenly facing one that did not blink, did not negotiate, and did not care how famous he was. In January 1957, Humphrey Bogart was gone at only 57. Hollywood was stunned. This was Bogey, the man who seemed carved out of cigarette smoke and sarcasm. But that was the cruel irony. The very image that helped make him immortal on screen was tied to the habit that helped destroy him in real life. His story is not just sad, it is almost too Hollywood to believe. The king of cool beaten by the thing that made him look cool. One of cinema's most famous smirks was finally silenced by smoke.
I won't forget you guys.
William Talman spent years losing cases on Perry Mason, but he never looked weak doing it. As Hamilton Burger, he was sharp, serious, and always ready to battle Raymond Burr's famous defense attorney in court. Week after week, he walked in like justice had put on a suit and combed its hair. Sure, Mason usually beat him like a drum, but Talman made losing look strangely respectable. Off-screen, though, he was fighting a much uglier case, and this time, there was no clever cross-examination to save him. Talman was addicted to cigarettes, the same little white sticks Hollywood treated like pocket-sized confidence. Back then, a cigarette made a man look tough, thoughtful, and important. Unfortunately, lungs are not impressed by good lighting or dramatic pauses. By the late 1960s, Talman was diagnosed with lung cancer. He was only in his early 50s, still young enough to have more roles, more scenes, more life ahead of him. But the disease moved fast, and instead of hiding from it, Talman did something rare and brave. While terminally ill, he filmed an anti-smoking message, warning people about the habit that was killing him. That ad aired after his death in 1968. He was just 53. For audiences, it was shocking. This was not just another actor fading into old Hollywood history. This was a man using his final days to look America in the eye and say, "Do not follow me here." That is what makes William Talman's story stand apart. He was not only a victim of Hollywood's smoke-filled culture. He became evidence. He turned his own tragedy into a warning label before warning labels were impossible to ignore.
Smoking and losing from someone who's been doing both for years.
Edward G. Robinson did not just play gangsters. For a while, he practically was the face of the whole gangster era, at least on screen, where the suits were sharp, the voice was raspy, and the attitude could cut through a room faster than a switchblade. In Little Caesar, Robinson snarled his way into movie history with a cigar or cigarette always close by, like it was his criminal partner with better lighting. Audiences loved it. The scowl, the gravelly voice, the no-nonsense walk. He made danger look stylish, almost classy, which is impressive when your screen image basically says, "I may rob you, but I'll do it in a very nice suit." But the smoke that helped build that tough guy image was not just decoration. Off camera, it carried a price no gangster movie could soften. By the early 1970s, Robinson was battling lung cancer. The disease slowly drained the fire out of one of Hollywood's original tough guys. This was the man audiences had watched intimidate rooms full of criminals, cops, and cowards. But cancer did not care about his reputation. It did not flinch at his stare. It did not back down from his voice. In 1973, Edward G. Robinson died at 79, only weeks after being awarded an honorary Oscar. The cruel part? He did not live long enough to accept it himself. His death felt like the closing of an era, a time when cigarettes were not just props but part of an actor's identity. And the irony was brutal. The screen's most indestructible gangster could outsmart rivals, survive movie shootouts, and own every scene, but he could not outwit the silent hitman of lung cancer.
I'm taking over this territory. From now on, it's mine.
Van Heflin was never the loudest man in the room, and that was exactly why people trusted him. He did not need a movie star entrance, a blinding smile, or a trumpet section following him down the street. Heflin had something quieter. Weight. In films like Shane and Johnny Eager, he brought a rugged honesty that made audiences believe every line. He looked like the kind of man who would fix your fence, give solid advice, and never brag about either one. But behind that unassuming image lay a dangerous habit that Hollywood considered a personality trait. Heflin was a heavy smoker, and in that golden age, cigarettes were everywhere on set, in dressing rooms, in commercials, even just a step away from landing a supporting role. For stars like Heflin, cigarettes weren't just props. They were a part of everyday life. Then, in 1971, the steady man was suddenly gone. At only 60, Van Heflin suffered a heart attack, with lung cancer complicating his condition. His death shocked fans because he did not seem like one of Hollywood's reckless flameouts. He was not the wild rebel, the nightclub disaster, or the headline-hungry bad boy. He seemed built for a long final act, the respected older actor, the wise voice, the man who would age into even better roles. Instead, cigarettes stole that future. That is what makes Heflin's story so quietly brutal. Smoke did not only take the loud, dangerous, self-destructive stars. It also took the dependable ones, the stable ones, the men audiences thought would always be there. Van Heflin's death proved that in old Hollywood, even the steady hands could be shaken loose by the same deadly habit.
Mathematically, the chances of your hitting me are slight.
Jack Carson was the kind of actor who could walk into a scene and make it feel warmer, louder, and about 20% more alive. He had that big grin, that quick mouth, and the kind of charm that made audiences feel like they already knew him. In comedies, he sparkled. In dramas like Mildred Pierce, he proved he was more than just the funny guy in the room. Carson could joke, charm, scheme, and steal a scene before anyone noticed their wallet was missing. Off-screen, he carried that same larger-than-life energy. Big laugh, big personality, big presence, and unfortunately, one very big smoking habit. In old Hollywood, that was almost treated like part of the uniform. Suit? Check. Hair combed? Check. Cigarette in hand? Congratulations. You are ready for stardom. But the problem with smoke is that it does not care how charming you are. By the early 1960s, Carson's health took a brutal turn. He was diagnosed with stomach and lung cancer, and the decline came fast. This was not some slow, graceful Hollywood fade-out. It was sudden, harsh, and cruel. In 1963, Jack Carson died at only 52. That is what makes his story hurt. Carson seemed like the type of man who could laugh his way past almost anything. A bad review, he could joke it off. A tough scene, he could brighten it. But cigarettes were not interested in punchlines. They cut short a career that still had plenty of life left in it. Jack Carson left behind dozens of performances that still shine. But his early exit left fans wondering how much more he could have given if not for cigarettes.
You actors, Ronnie. No appreciation for what we directors do to make you look good.
John Ireland had the kind of face Hollywood loved to throw into danger. Rugged good looks, sharp eyes, and a stare that made him look like he already knew who was lying before the scene even started. He fit perfectly in westerns and film noir, where every man had a secret, every room had bad lighting, and apparently every pocket came with a cigarette. With roles in All the King's Men and Spartacus, Ireland built a career on grit. He was not always the giant name on the poster, but he was the kind of actor who made a movie feel tougher just by showing up. Dependable, intense, and never soft around the edges. He carried scenes like a working man, carrying a toolbox quietly, firmly, and without asking for applause. But like so many men of his generation, cigarettes were always close. In old Hollywood, smoking was not treated like a warning sign. It was treated like atmosphere. A cowboy had a horse, a detective had a shadow, and an actor had a cigarette. Very stylish, very cinematic, and very bad for the lungs. By the early 1990s, that habit had caught up with him. Lung cancer claimed his health, and in 1992, John Ireland died at 78. His passing did not create the same earthquake as Bogart, Wayne, or McQueen, but that almost makes it sadder. Ireland represented the working backbone of Hollywood, the actors who showed up, gave the scene weight, and helped build the movies people remember. His story proves smoking did not only take the biggest legends, it also took the steady ones, the reliable ones, the men who kept Hollywood running while others got the headlines. John Ireland may not have been the loudest name on the list, but smoke silenced him all the same. Keenan Wynn was not always the guy whose name sat above the title, but let's be honest, he was everywhere. He had one of those faces old Hollywood could drop into any scene and instantly make it more alive. Big voice, big energy, big eyebrows, doing half the acting before he even opened his mouth. In films like Annie Get Your Gun, Doctor, Strangelove, and plenty of Disney productions, Wynn became the kind of actor audiences recognized even if they had to snap their fingers and say, "Wait, I know that guy." And that was his magic. He did not need to be the leading man. He was the spark plug, the colorful uncle, the loud boss, the suspicious neighbor, the man who could walk into a scene for 2 minutes and make it feel like the movie suddenly had coffee. But like so many character actors of his generation, Wynn also had another constant companion: cigarettes. In old Hollywood, smoking was treated almost like a professional skill. If you could hit your mark, say your line, and light a cigarette without dropping ash on your suit, congratulations, you had range. The problem was, the lungs were keeping score. By the 1980s, years of smoking had done their damage. Wynn's health crumbled, and in 1986, he died of lung cancer at 70. His death hit differently because Keenan Wynn felt familiar. He was not just a distant movie idol. He felt like someone you had seen your whole life, dependable, funny, loud, and full of character. Losing him was like losing an old friend from the screen. His story is another brutal page in Hollywood's smoke-filled playbook. A talent that could light up any scene, slowly extinguished by the very smoke the industry once treated like decoration. Charles Bronson looked like a man you did not argue with, unless your life insurance was fully paid up. With that stone-cold stare, carved-up face, and quiet menace, he became the ultimate tough guy of the 1960s and 70s. In The Dirty Dozen, he fit right in with soldiers, killers, and men who looked allergic to small talk. In Death Wish, he turned urban revenge into a whole brand of American rage. Bronson did not just play dangerous men. He looked like danger had been given cheekbones. That is why his real-life ending feels so brutal. Behind the steel eyes and the bulletproof image was a habit slowly working him over: cigarettes. For decades, Bronson smoked heavily, and in old Hollywood, nobody treated that like a warning sign. A cigarette in a tough guy's hand was practically part of the costume. Coat, gun, glare, smoke. Congratulations, you have a movie poster. But smoke does not care how intimidating you look. It does not get scared because you once stared down an army on screen. Year after year, the damage built quietly, without a dramatic soundtrack, without a villain stepping out of the shadows. By the 1990s, Bronson's health was collapsing, and lung cancer became the enemy he could not simply punch, shoot, or silence with one deadly look. He battled the disease for years, but in 2003, Charles Bronson died at 81. For fans, it was hard to process. This was the man who seemed carved out of concrete. The man audiences believed could walk through gunfire, betrayal, bad neighborhoods, and bad scripts without blinking. Yet, the thing that finally exposed his vulnerability was not a movie villain. It was smoke. That is the cruel irony of Bronson's story. Hollywood sold him as resilience in human form. He was the face of grit, revenge, and survival. But cigarettes found the weak spot behind the legend. The man who seemed bulletproof was not defeated by bullets at all. He was fatally wounded by the habit Hollywood once made look cool. Old Hollywood was brilliant at selling illusions. It could make a cigarette look like power, romance, mystery, even success. One puff on screen could turn a man into a legend, but real life does not cut to black before the damage shows. Behind the smoky stare and perfect suit were hospital rooms, failing lungs, broken bodies, heart disease, cancer, and families watching icons slowly disappear. That is the part Hollywood never put on the poster. Smoking did not make these men immortal. It only made the image look glamorous while the cost kept growing in silence. Some faced lung cancer. Others faced different brutal illnesses. But the warning is the same. A habit can look cool in public and still destroy you in private. So if this story leaves you with anything, let it be this. Admire the talent, remember the legends, but never romanticize the thing that helped take so much from them. Which name on this list shocked you the most? And who else belongs in this smoky chapter of Hollywood history? Drop your thoughts below, subscribe for more hidden Hollywood stories, and turn on the bell, because the next truth may be even darker than the smoke.